It began with something as small as a sound, subtle enough to ignore but strange enough to linger in the back of the mind. A dull thump, steady and deliberate, echoed through the walls late at night while I brushed my teeth. At first, I tried to explain it. Away old houses make strange noises. Maybe it was the plumbing or the wind or the creak of settling wood, but this sound didn't come from above or below. It came from the hallway, deep and patient, like someone knocking from inside the house. I paused, toothbrush still in hand, listening harder. 3 knocks, then silence. I shrugged it off, told myself it was nothing, and turned off the bathroom light. As I stepped into the hallway, everything felt wrong. The air seemed colder than it had been minutes ago. The lights above flickered slightly, barely noticeable, but enough to catch my eye. That's when I saw Itador at the very end of the hallway, where I was sure there had only ever been a blank wall. I stopped in my tracks, my eyes adjusting to the dim light. It was a plain wooden door, the kind you'd find in any old house. Faded white paint, tarnished brass knob, and a frame that didn't quite match the rest of the hall. It looked like it had been there forever, but I knew it hadn't. I'd lived here 5 years. I knew every inch of this house, and that door had never been there. I walked slowly toward it, heartbeat rising with every step. My fingers grazed the surface of the door. The wood felt cold, far colder than the surrounding air. My breath misted, as if I were standing outside in winter. I didn't open it. I didn't even try. I just stood there, frozen, unable to look away. Later, I checked my phone. I had a photo from last week of the hallway my cat had knocked over a lamp, and I'd snapped a picture to show a friend. In that photo, clear as day, the wall was smooth, no door, no frame, nothing but beige paint and a slight scuff. Near the floorboard, my stomach sank. I stared at the photo, then back at the door. Something had changed. Something had entered my house. The room behind the door didn't make sense, not in the way a room should. When I finally found the courage to open it, I was met with a space that seemed untouched by time, yet disturbingly aware of my presence. The air inside was thick and still, colder than the rest of the house, and it carried a musty, almost metallic smell that clung to my skin. The walls were covered in peeling gray wallpaper that curled like old parchment, and the wooden floor creaked with each hesitant step I took inside. A single bulb dangled from the cracked ceiling, its cord swaying slightly, though there was no draft in the room. But the worst part, the part that made my skin crawl, was the mirror. Tall, with an intricately carved frame, it stood on the far wall, facing the door directly. The moment I looked into it, I knew something was off. The reflection didn't match what I saw around me. In the glass, the wallpaper was pristine, the bulb was lit and steady, and a soft golden glow filled the space. But what truly made my breath catch was the figure. It stood behind me in the reflection. Tall, pale, and entirely still. I turned around instantly, but the room was empty. When I looked back into the mirror, the figure was closer. Its face was obscured, like it had been blurred out of reality. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there in silence. I backed away slowly, unable to take my eyes off the reflection as I left the room. The moment I stepped out and slammed the door shut, the cold vanished. But the image burned into my mind, and the memory of that unnatural room clung to me like something unfinished. Something waiting the mirror was the only thing in the room that seemed alive, and yet it didn't reflect reality the way it should have. I stared into it, hoping I had imagined the figure standing behind me, but it was still there. Its shape was vaguely human, tall and motionless, but its face was nothing more than a smear, like someone had wiped their hand across wet paint where its features should be. It didn't blink or move, just loomed silently behind me in the reflection. I turned around again, heart pounding, but the room remained empty. Dust danced in the still air. The light bulb hung lifeless, and I was alone, but not in the mirror. I reached out toward the glass, unable to resist the pull of it. My fingers stopped just short of touching the surface. In the reflection, the figure was closer, much closer. It stood inches behind my shoulder now. Even though I still felt no one near me, I backed away slowly, not turning around this time, afraid of what I might see. If I did, the glass trembled slightly, as if a breath had fogged the inside of it. I closed the door hard and leaned against it, my hands shaking, my skin cold and clammy. Even outside the room, I felt the figure watching me. The reflection had lodged itself into my brain, and every shadow in the hallway suddenly felt too dark, too deep. I couldn't explain it, not to myself, and certainly not to anyone else, but I knew the truth. I had seen something I wasn't supposed to, something that had been waiting quietly behind that door. And now it knew I had seen it, and now it wasn't going to go back to wherever it came from after. I slammed the door shut. I did everything I could to forget it was there. I pushed a heavy bookshelf in front of it, stacked boxers on top of that, anything to block it out of sight. But no matter how much I covered it, I could still feel it, like a presence pushing through the wall, pressing into my thoughts. The cold never left that end of the hallway, and sometimes, even in the middle of the day, I'd catch a faint knocking sound. Not loud, like before softer now, like fingertips dragging across wood, patient and deliberate. It never came from anywhere else, only that one place. I started keeping the lights on, every light in the house, especially near the hallway. I avoided walking past the door, even though it was the only way to the bedroom. My sleep became shallow, full of strange dreams where I was standing in front of the mirror again, unable to move, the figure getting closer and closer each time. Sometimes I would wake up to the sound of the bookshelf shifting, as if something was gently nudging it from the other side. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it all, that stress and isolation were making me see things that weren't real. But then the note appeared, a small scrap of yellowed paper taped to the door. Even though it was blocked by furniture, in shaky handwriting, it read, "Let me out." I stared at it for hours, trying to figure out how it could have gotten there. There was no sign of disturbance, nothing moved, nothing broken, and yet the message was there, as if it had always been part of the door itself, like it had been waiting for me to notice it again. Waiting for acknowledgement. I didn't know what it meant at first. Now I'm real. Those were the words whispered through the cracks of the door the night I tried to ignore it for good. I had shoved everything I could in front of it. A dresser, old boxers filled with books, even nailed wooden planks across the frame. But still, in the middle of the night, the voice came calm and deliberate, as if it had always been a part of the house. It didn't shout, didn't beg, it simply stated a truth I hadn't yet understood. By opening the door, by stepping inside and looking into that mirror, I had done more than just observe. I had invited it in. After that night, things in the house changed. Subtle at first, reflections started to behave strangely. I'd catch glimpses of movement behind me in the glass that weren't there when I turned around. The hallway grew darker, colder. Lights flickered even when I changed the bulbs. The sound of footsteps followed me down the hall. I stopped trusting mirrors altogether, covering them with towels. But even then I could feel it, like my reflection was no longer mine. Friends stopped visiting. One of them said my house made them feel sick, like they were being watched from every corner. I stopped talking to people altogether. The more time passed, the more the presence grew. It didn't need the door anymore. It had found cracks in the walls, spaces between the silence where it could breathe. Sometimes I saw its shadow lingering at the edge of my vision. Sometimes I'd find new scratches along the walls, shapes almost like handprints. Something I had seen me back, and now it had weight, now it had form, and now it was no longer trapped in that room. Please like and subscribe, channel Mindset Shift. Thank you.